This is what journalism is all about, exposing corruption at the highest levels and explaining how it was able to take place. So what are Weinstein's connections to these intelligence agencies and the Mossad? The fact of the matter is, he had hired private services such as Kroll, which often deals in ex-intelligence officers. You see, when you're in the intelligence community, folks, do you ever really leave? And then Black Cube, which is mostly made up of ex-Mossad operatives. Now, Black Cube has agencies in London, Tel Aviv, and Paris. It is a global organization, and what they did is unbelievable. According to Farrow, he targeted dozens, yes, dozens of different people, making psychological profiles on them, including their sexual preferences. On top of that, Rose McGowan was visited numerous times by at least two of these agents on behalf of Black Cube, disguising themselves as other things, of course. For instance, a woman calling herself Diana Philippe contacted Rose numerous times, had lunches with her, walked around LA with her, and it was on behalf of a women's civil rights organization. And all she was trying to do was farm information for Weinstein.
In the previous video on the Star David, I mentioned the demon Metatron, and here is his symbol.
Metatron's cube is made up of 13 circles that are connected by straight lines. Together they're believed to form all the shapes in existence. According to sacred geometry, Metatron's cube represents the blueprint of creation. It symbolizes balance and harmony, illustrating how all life is connected.
Something peculiar is that Metatron's name sounds like something out of a Transformers movie. And of course you have this talisman, the Saturnus talisman, if you will.
On the first face is engraved a pentagram or a star with 5 points. On the other side is engraved a bull's head enclosed in a 6-pointed star and surrounded by letters composing the name Rempha, the planetary genius of Saturn, according to the alphabet of the Magi. Moloch, Chiun and Remphan are all names for the star god, Saturn, whose symbol is a 6-pointed star formed by 2 triangles. Saturn was the supreme god of the Chaldeans.
Yes, the Chaldeans, the same place that Abraham is told to get from thee before y'all has any dealings with them. Which again is why I find it so funny that the Muslims think that Abraham has something to do with their black stone or their black cube, but I digress.
The hexagram may have been brought to the Israelites by Solomon when he turned to witchcraft and idolatry after his marriage to Pharaoh's daughter in 922 BC. It became known as the Seal of Solomon in Egyptian magic and witchcraft. David had absolutely nothing to do with the hexagram, and that star most certainly did not, in any way, represent Yahweh's people. Solomon gave himself up to satanic worship and built altars to Ashtoreth and Moloch, also known as Saturn.
Now I know for me it took some digging to really link the connection between the star Remphan to the 6-pointed star, only because the Bible really does not give a physical description of it. However, the catch is in the name. When you do a dig on Remphan and all the other various names that he had been known to be called, and then you compare it with the Babylonians or the Chaldeans and their 6-star deity and who they associated with, that there is where the connection is made.
In the 1800s, in Germany, it was adopted by Mayer Rothschild to mark his house. The 6-pointed star was used as the Rothschild coat of arms.
Yeah, Gloria.
Yes?
Elaborate on our education system in that of Saturn.
Absolutely. Academia and the Saturnine connection. First, we start in elementary school. After 12 years of indoctrination, we get our black caps.
And when you look at the shape of that black cap, happens to be a black square. And would you also examine the attire, a black robe? You do know that the priest of Saturn dressed just like that. You don't find it funny that when you go into a courtroom, the judge himself is dressed like that? Why do the robes never fit? They are always oversized, as if you were to cloak something. Almost as if you were to be dressed like the Grim Reaper himself, but with the black oversized cloaked robe. If you are climbing up the academia ladder, if you are climbing up the educational systems ladder, If you are looking for degrees, accolades, scholarships in their satanic Saturnine system, you are only working your way up closer to the devil himself. Don't take it from me. Examine the evidence thereof. It's all ritual. 12 years. They keep you in school. Why 12? Well, there are 12 houses of the zodiac after all.
Now, in modern history, we have our favorite superhero, Superman. Real name is Kal-El, and the S on the uniform is not for Superman or son of Krypton, but is secretly for Saturn.
You know, I always kind of thought there was something funny with that logo, and of course, when you do a quick Wikipedia search on its origins, you go down to representations, and just read off what that says for me really quickly, please.
The symbol was featured on a medicine blanket given to an ancestor of the Kent family by a Native American tribe after he helped to cure them of a plague, and was supposed to represent a snake, an animal held to possess healing powers by the tribe, implying that, by wearing this symbol, Superman was a metaphorical healer.
And of course, it's kind of hard to do a video these days without coming across that good old serpent, the old-fashioned renowned deceiver. This is why I tell everyone to do your homework and to do your research, for truly the devil is in the details. Oh, do tell.
We can no longer turn our head without seeing a square shape. We even work in what is called a cubicle. Mankind has imprisoned themselves to the shape. And when you die, you go to the rectangular coffin. Even in our modern movies, the answer is in front of you. Transformers come from a robotic planet taken over by Titan machines. In the Avengers, Loki is after a cube. And in the famous show Star Trek, the Borg live in a giant black cube.
Now, starting from the radio, old school TV box, game systems, computer screens, tablet screens, phone screens, and even the performance stage without the curtains. They're all black.
Saturn and Satan. Saturn has also been associated with Satan in this, for numerous reasons. First, many authors argue that the word Satan is derived from the word Saturn. Second, Saturn is associated with the color black as well as Satan. Third, ancients considered Saturn to be the farthest planet from the Sun, the latter being associated with the principle of good. Note that Pluto never was considered a planet. Saturn is consequently the celestial body that is the less exposed to the Sun's divine light and thus associated with the coldness of the principle of evil. Finally, the great god Pan, the horned deity, represented Saturn in ancient paganism. This half-man, half-goat creature is considered the ancestor of our modern depictions of Satan.
And slightly below, you'll see a quote from a man known as Manly P. Hall. He's a high-ranking Freemason and highly esteemed in the occult and all his esoteric teachings. And here's what he has to say about Mr. Pan.
Pan was a composite creature, the upper part with the exception of his horns being human, and the lower part in the form of a goat. The pipes of Pan signify the natural harmony of the spheres, and the god himself is a symbol of Saturn because this planet is enthroned in Capricorn, whose emblem is a goat. Manly P. Hall, Secret Teachings of All Ages.
But let's not stop there. Let's also examine the letters that make up Saturn, Satan, and if you do a slight rearrangement, you can get Santa, who also is renowned and revered in the winter season. And don't be fooled. Saturn worship is not only in Gentile, pagan, polytheistic religions. Believe it or not, there's a connection with two of the world's most renowned religions.
The Saturn connection with Islam and Judaism.
Now, before I get into this segment, let me explain to you all. There is a big, huge difference between what the world knows as Judaism and what the Bible speaks of the 12 tribes, one of which being Judah. They are not the same. When Yahshua is called a Jew, it was not because he practiced Judaism. It was because he was from the tribe of Judah. His lifestyle, his heritage, his customs were all cultural. He was an Israelite, a Hebrew Israelite. There was no misnomer or a such figment known as Judaism. This came later on, but you will need to keep in mind that there were derelict Jews of that time. Jews who practiced the Talmud, Jews who practiced the mystic teachings of Kabbalah. And this is who he went up against. This is who he called the synagogue of Satan. And ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, if you read Revelations chapter 2 verse 9, you'll see that this same spirit is still around today. And it's this very spirit working through these wicked individuals that the whole earth has been ensnared and captured and captivated. Through these people will we see the end times being issued and ushered in. Through these people will we see the Antichrist being brought up to the world stage, because they are the ones in power, the hidden hand, if you will, the blackness behind the black curtain. That being out the way, let's pick on Islam first. I'm gonna save the best for last. And to do so, I'm gonna play a video really quickly to give you a brief introduction of one of Islam's most revered shrines and sites, known as the Kaaba stone.
The Kaaba is a sacred building situated at the center of the most prominent mosque in Islam, at the Masjid al-Haram in Mecca, Saudi Arabia. Renowned for being the most religiously significant shrine amongst Muslims, this square-shaped building is elegantly draped in a cotton and silk veil. Also referred to as the Kiswa or Al-Kaaba al-Musharrafah, the Kaaba is the final destination for those on the holy pilgrimages of Hajj, the annual Muslim pilgrimage that is considered one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and Umrah, the Islamic pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca that can be performed at any time of the year. It is considered by Muslims to be the Beit Allah, or House of God, and is the direction for Muslims around the world during prayers. 5 times a day, almost 2 billion Muslims globally turn and pray towards this striking black monument, the holiest and most sacred site in all of Islam, considered the holiest place on earth. The history of the Kaaba can be traced back to pre-Islamic Mecca. There are several verses in the Quran about the revered Kaaba, where it is described as the first house of worship for mankind. Embedded in the eastern corner of the Kaaba is the black stone, or the Al-Hajar al-Aswad. This stone, a fragment with ancient origins, holds unparalleled significance, and its now broken pieces are surrounded by a ring of stone and held together by a heavy silver band. Pilgrims aspire to touch or kiss the black stone during tawaf, a ritual of circumambulation, the act of moving around a sacred object or idol. The task, though challenging due to its popularity, is a testament to the unwavering devotion of the faithful. The black stone is a focal point, symbolizing a link with God and true humility. In Islamic tradition, it was believed that Adam wept for 40 days after his expulsion from the garden until he repented, after which God sent down the black stone, teaching him the Hajj. According to a prophetic hadith or event, Adam and Eve reunited in Arafat, near Mecca. Legend has it that the stone was originally white, but turned black by absorbing the sins of countless pilgrims who have kissed and touched it. Later on, according to the Quran, the Kaaba was built by Ibrahim, or Abraham, and his son Ismail, or Ishmael, on Allah's instructions, and it served as the first house of worship for mankind. It is believed that during the construction of the Kaaba, the angel Jibril brought back to Ibrahim the black stone of Kaaba, which he placed in the Kaaba's eastern corner. The black stone of Kaaba is believed to be one of the original structure's only remnants built by Ibrahim, since the remaining structure was demolished and rebuilt many times for maintenance over the history of the Kaaba. According to many historians, in the days before the rise of Islam, Mecca was a well-known center of trade, and the Kaaba served as a holy site for various ancient Bedouin tribes across the Arabian Peninsula. Bedouin people used to go on a pilgrimage to Mecca once a year, where they worshipped their gods in the Kaaba. Statues of various pagan deities, including Hubal, were placed in and around the Kaaba. However, when Prophet Muhammad, the founder of Islam, peace be upon him, returned to Mecca in 629-30 CE, he cleansed the Kaaba of idols, restoring it to the monotheism of Prophet Ibrahim, or Abraham. The Kaaba hasn't remained unchanged since its inception. It has faced natural disasters, including flooding, and has come under attack, leading to several reconstructions. Most historians believe the Kaaba has been rebuilt around 12 times, with the latest renovation in 1996 using cutting-edge technology to fortify it against natural disasters. Imagine, the Kaaba we see today is not exactly the same as the one constructed by the prophets Ibrahim and Ismail. Over centuries, it has witnessed major reconstructions, adapting to the challenges posed by time and the elements. Now, let's talk about the color of the kiswa, the black cloth covering the Kaaba. Originally, it was multicolored, but the tradition of using black started with the Abbasids, a historical Islamic dynasty, to eliminate frequent color changes. And speaking of changes, the Kaaba wasn't always a cube. Initially, it had a rectangular shape, which evolved into its current cubic form during a reconstruction by the Quraysh tribe, a group of Arab clans that historically inhabited and controlled Mecca. The doors of the Kaaba have also undergone transformations. It started with no doors, then 2 doors for entry and exit, and now only 1 door remains, and the space includes pillars, lanterns, and a small table with historical plaques. It is said that there is a celestial counterpart of the Kaaba believed to exist in the 7th heaven, or the Bayt al-Mamur, or the frequent house, where angels are said to perform tawaf, similar to the earthly ritual around the Kaaba. Directly above, it is also believed to be the location of Allah's throne, or a sacred gathering place for angels. Beyond its physical presence, the Kaaba holds immense significance.
Now, nowhere in Scripture do you read about Abraham veering off the path that Yah has directly set him on, going to a land that Yah has directly led him to go to Mecca and deal anything with some black stone or white stone. It doesn't matter. You will never find that. And it's not because it's not important, it's because it didn't happen. One thing about Islam is that they have taken a lot of what's in Scripture. Muhammad himself wanted to become a Jew, but one, he was an unlearned man. He could not read the Scriptures, which goes against Scriptures. He couldn't write, which also goes against Scriptures. The other thing is that if you read about him, he was an angry man. He was a wrathful man. He'd be in the synagogues arguing and fighting, and we would always frequently have to put him out. So you know what he did? He took what he learned from us, and he went and created his own. Instead of the Sabbath being on the 7th day, he made his Sabbath on the 6th day, which is known as Friday. Instead of Yom Kippur, where we fast 24 hours for atonement of sin, he started Ramadan. They kept the no pig or no pork eating, but you'd be surprised to see how many Islamic people will engage in shrimp and other crustaceans, but I digress. Which is why a lot of the world believes that we're all worshiping the same Father, when I tell you we are not. Also, take note of how the color changed from a multicolored system for the covering, which is how we had our tabernacle in the wilderness, you read about it, to all of a sudden becoming all black. This shrine, I will be honest and tell you, was originally for pagan deities. Muhammad comes there, destroys all of the deities except one, the moon deity, known as Allah, and said this deity is the one true God, which is why you see the moon crescent and that star associated with Islam. That sign predates Islam. Have you ever asked them what does that mean to them? And again, why a cube? Things get even more interesting when you look at the parallels between this phenomenon in Islam and with the Revelation 2-9ers, we're going to call them that so we're not censored on YouTube, but what the Revelation 2-9ers do called the Tefillin. Now the Tefillin is this, and before I play the parallels, let me just state that they wrap around the arm 7 times in the same way that the Muslims wrap around or circumambulate around or dance with this cube 7 times counterclockwise. And I'm going to tell you why after you watch this montage.
Hi, I'm Kim Gottlieb. I'm Jewish and I'm gay. And my life changed when my rabbi came over to me one day and said, "Are you into leather?" Now I enjoyed the double entendre, but what he was actually referring to was I interested in starting to put on tefillin, which are these 2 boxes which have little prayers in them. One goes on the hand and the other on the head. The one that goes on the hand goes on the non-dominant hand, because we believe that the dominant hand is the hand that you use being in the world, but the non-dominant hand is the one that relies on unseen forces. So it goes on the muscle and it's wound around 7 times. And in some ways this is an act of submission, of appreciating that there's a power greater than ourselves. We stop at this point, then put on the one for the head. Our head is so full of thoughts that sometimes we stray away from what is good and best for the world. But it's interesting that it's placed on the point that the Ayurvedics refer to as the third eye, which relates to intuition. So I wonder whether our rabbis thought of that when they came up with the design. Next, we do a prayer that is about betrothal. And it's actually the prayer that's said in the wedding ceremony. And it's almost as if we have moved into a dance of divinity with the divine.
Work. When you move it, you're sort of making gestures or dancing with it. Another example of the interactions that this inspires.
But most importantly, we're creating a shin, the first letter of Shema, the Jewish prayer, which tells us that you should bind it for a sign upon your heart and upon your head.
Both of these religions have the 7 wraparounds or the 7 circles, which makes 7 rings around a black cube. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point in time, you should now have eyes to see and ears to hear. So what deity is this worship indicative of? Now, some of these people would tell you, you could find this in these verses here in the Bible. And if you take that at face value, one would be led to believe that, okay, well, the Bible says to do so. But keep digging, because there are plenty of biblical examples where ideas are presented as being as closely held to the person as clothing, such as the Song of Songs, where it says, place me as a seal upon thine heart. Well, how come you don't see these people opening and cutting up themselves and putting a seal on their heart? Or Proverbs, let not truth and mercy forsake thee. Bind them about thy neck. Write them upon the tablet of thine heart. Okay, why don't they put anything on their neck or their heart? Furthermore, here's the big thing. Where does it say to design it as a cube? A black cube at that? Well, in the Bible it doesn't. And this is why I tell you guys, do not be misled. Truly what a lot of these Revelation 2-9ers do, whether they realize it or not, is rooted in Pharisaic Judaism, is rooted in Talmudic Judaism, is rooted in Kabbalistic Judaism. And I don't find it funny either that the Kabbalah and the Kaaba stone phonetically sound very similar. When I did study with the Revelation 2-9ers when I was 15, one of the things that always threw me was the dark clothing. They were really dark people. And I don't mean skin tone. Obviously, they were whiter than me. They were lighter than me. However, there was a darkness about their dress. Black coats, black shoes, black hats, and so forth.
The death cult of Saturn. The Greek god that was the same as Saturn was Cronus, the youngest of the Titans. The Carthaginian god Baal or Moloch was the same god, and devoured children similar to Cronus, who ate children.
And of course, this was commonly done on December 25th.
Further study goes on to reveal that the zodiac sign of Aquarius is ruled by the planetary force of Saturn.
Oh, do please continue.
The age of Aquarius is important to the occult because that is the new age of man, or as Crowley defined it, the Aeon of Horus.
And at this point, if you have not seen the Marine Kingdom Part 1 or 2, I highly suggest you stop and go watch that. But for those who have, are you seeing how all this ties into one? How Satan's kingdom is all coming back to oneness in these last days?
The new age brings about one consciousness and the evolution of man into technology through transhumanism.
They say evolution. I say devolution. And this transhumanism project is really speared by the Matrix, headed by the metaverse and all things digital. Ready Player One?
This concept is threaded back to the ancients' quest for the golden age.
And knowing that this is a death code symbolized by a Death Star, It should come as now no surprise that most of the, if not all of the major companies and organizations are really out to kill you, but they can tell you better than I could.
Create more of a population problem. This is a very important question to get right because it was absolutely key for me. When our foundation first started up, it was focused on reproductive health. That was the main thing we did because I thought, population growth in poor countries is the biggest problem they face. You've got to help mothers who want to limit family size have the tools and education to do that. And I thought that's the only thing that really counts. Now, the world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
That's video number 1. Let's go to video number 2.
The first week we met in January of 19 in California and to set up the goals for the next 5 years. And one of them was by 2023, we will reduce the number of people in the world by 50%. I think today this dream is becoming reality.
When we invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce population, more of our children can breathe clean air and drink clean water.
Davos a few years ago, the Edelman survey showed us that the good news is the elite across the world trust each other more and more. So we can come together and design and do beautiful things together. The bad news is that in every single country they were polling, the majority of people trusted that elite less. So we can lead, but...
Do you wonder why they trust the elite less? Or do it? Listen.
So in the session we just attended here at the Economic Forum, I think there was a sense of relief actually in your frankness. You brought up some issues that others are reluctant to bring up.
Always. All the religious groups are against me because I'm talking about population. They want more souls, I want less on the planet. Then they ask me a brilliant question, how do you reduce the human footprint? I said, you have to reduce the number of feet. That's the only way. We can take it upon ourselves that we will not push the human population. You can have a dog. I am not saying children are bad, they're wonderful, but it's just too many. No, it's not a joke, it's very threatening. If the insect population disappears, the planet will be destroyed. Yes, the worms disappear, the planet will be destroyed. If you and me disappear, planet will flourish.
We've only got this one beautiful planet, Earth. We've got to reduce the unrealistic, unsustainable lifestyle of so many people on the planet. We also, and here's a thing for all of you young people, a nightmare that you're presented with. That's already there are 8 billion of us on the planet. Already we're beginning to run out of some natural resources, faster than nature can replenish them. By 2050, it's estimated there will be 10 billion. And people are saying, well, if everybody acquires the standard of living just of a normal person, not the super wealthy with all their private jets and blah, 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 then we would need 4 new planets. We haven't got 4 new planets.
And research shows educating girls is one of the smartest things.
I meant to say that, yes, indeed. Women's education, empowering women, and scholarships to keep girls in school beyond puberty. Family size then tends to drop worldwide, indeed.
Yeah, I don't think you're melodramatic at all. I think it's I mean, I don't want to be melodramatic, but it's almost like a death cult.
It's a death cult. No, that is exactly right. It's essentially the extinctionists. Like, it's in the limit, it is that they're propagating the extinction of humanity and civilization. And there's some people who are like most of the time it's implicit. They don't but sometimes it's explicit. Like, there was a guy on the front page of the New York Times who literally has the thing called the extinctionist movement, and he was quoted on the front page of the New York Times as saying, there are 8 billion people in the world, but it would be better if there were none.
Ooh.
And I'm like, well, buddy, you can start with yourself.
Yeah.
Disturbing as this next segment is, there is a tell-all book that's written by the child of one of the members of the Shylights. And with this child seeing his father and Joe Jackson and even the Jackson Fives engaged in, remember that Saturn can too grant prosperity and gain.
Of God or of the light, of the opposite. So, and there's this concept that there is this concept that with Saturn being a fallen deity, you know, the fallen angel, Lucifer, all that kind of stuff that's connected, is that, you know, Saturn, the deity was imprisoned, you know, in a black cube as punishment for falling. And Saturn was a deity that was exiled from the realm, so it can only operate in this metaphysical dark energy to a degree. So it's an exiled deity that the people that are worshipping it would want to free it, because they believe that, and again, this is not all sections, but this is particularly the Roman kind of occult look to, or the Roman kind of lens, as it were. They believe that Saturn was a god and deity of the golden age, that he brings abundance, and there's a lot of kind of rich and famous people that will worship, that clearly, in my opinion, worship Saturn on the black cube. And again, in Arthur Morris's book, he goes to talk on that by worshipping this deity, he excelled in his careers, he excelled in his life, his rituals and his beliefs manifested into his reality, where he was, you know, afforded a really luxurious life and lots of opportunities. Now, whether that was down,
reminds me of the exact same situation we have going on today, a much watered down version, but I sold my soul to the devil for, you know, riches and fame.
Yeah, so like, as much as people want to claim that there's this sort of
financial, educational, academic, sports, it doesn't matter, but you will have to engage in some death. This is the Death Star people are worshiping nonetheless.
My father, Credell Red Jones. There he is. There he is back in the day. All right. He says, my father, Credell Red Jones, was amongst the few who managed to cast a solid impression on the music industry. Even though he lived a life different from what he deserved, his contribution to the music world will never be forgotten. It all started in 1959 in his final year of high school. He, along with my mother, Deborah Jones, and friends, Robert Lester and Marshall Thompson, performed in a band that went by the name of the Shylights. Together, the band members attended Hyde Park High School in Chicago, Illinois. The band produced numerous songs that locked spots in the top 10, hit top singles, and the Billboard Hot Chart 100. Disputedly, the Shylights ruled the R&B industry for decades. Well, there'd be a lot of spinning around groups that would sha-la-la-la-la-la-la deny that. So, here we go. Let Me Be the Man My Daddy Was the first song that served to be the band's claim to fame. The Rehearsal, page 9. One day, the Jackson 5 came to our house for a quote-unquote rehearsal. That's what they called it. They were asked to go into the house to pick my dad up and practice a while before the world tour with the Shylights. So they were asked to go into the house to pick my dad up. His dad, remember, is Credell of the Shylights. That's old Credell right there, Red. They called him Red because he was a little lightish. That's what we call lightish ones. Okay. For folks that don't know about it. Now you know. Okay. Says all 5 members, to pick up my dad and practice a while before the world tour with the Shylights. All 5 members, that's Randy, Jermaine, Jackie, he naming them, Marlon, and Tito were there. That's 5. Randy, Jermaine, Jackie, Marlon, and Tito were there. They arrived together in a black limousine while Michael arrived in a separate one. Now, at this time, I'm imagining that this was when Michael was with them and they were grown and toured together. Okay, they parked in front of our house, walked in, and began to talk about how they were going to produce this concert. The next day, I remember seeing the Jacksons going downstairs to do a rehearsal for the concert. They even had dinner at our house. During the session, my sisters and I, when they were 9 and 6 and I was 5, we were brought down to the entertainment room located in the bottom basement of our house. My mother was down there at first, but she ended up going upstairs. She didn't want to see it. That's my side. All 4 members of the Shy Lights, including my dad, Marshall Thompson, Eugene Record, and Robert Lester, were there, along with the owner of Brunswick Records, Nathan Trenopole. Also, there was Joe Jackson. Each of the Jackson 5, including Randy, Jermaine, Jackie, Marlon, and Tito, and Michael. None of the others caught our attention as much as the new figure, who none of us recognized, who came in with Nat. So none of the others caught the attention of the children, and that is Credel's children. So nobody caught their attention as much as the new figure, whom none of the kids recognized, who came in with Nat, who the kids did recognize. It was a priest dressed in a satanic black robe with a hood that covered his face. The downstairs area was one large entertainment room with 2 smaller rooms that are connected to it. The main room had a pool table and bar, while the other 2 rooms were simply sitting rooms. There was also a small half bathroom to the side. As I walked into one of the sitting rooms, now, as far as I know, you can say these things on YouTube. They just demonetize you. We already on that status, so I might as well be able to say it, but I'm going to say it carefully, and also we don't want to trigger anyone. So he says, as he walked into one of the sitting rooms, he saw his sister being bent over the table and R-worded by Marshall Thompson from behind, while Joe Jackson pinned her down. Joe Jackson is the Jackson family patriarch. Once he finished, now this is something, see, you putting, this is something that you could sue for if it was not true. Now, a lot of times they say that when they write these tell-alls and the people don't sue, it's because a lawsuit may bring out certain details that would actually lend credibility to the story that's being told by the victim. So he says that his sister was being violated by Marshall Thompson from behind while Joe Jackson pinned her down. Once he finished, Marshall got up and then began to hold my sister down by her shoulders, while Joe Jackson then began to savagely R her from the front. The other Jackson 5 members and the Shy Lights musicians were in the loop. In other words, they were aware of what was going on in the entertainment room, waiting right next to this room we were in. I tried to stop them, but I was held down by the Jackson 5 members. I started to yell, "Get off my sister, get off my sister," but of course he was too little. But they weren't bothered one bit. I was quickly subdued by the group, who then brought my sister into the main entertainment room, where a satanic pentagram was drawn on the floor in white chalk. Does he mean like this one? Does he mean like this one, being drawn on the floor in white chalk? Something like that, a little taste like that. Okay? Yeah, I believe it, and the fact that I believe it makes it very terrible that nobody believes this story when this man tells this story. So, Dad, Credell, with all the sacrifices that he made, giving up his daughter, making his wife aware of these things. His wife had to be aware because at first she was in the basement, then she left. So she knew what was about to happen, and at the end of that, your children fighting over crumbs. He didn't have enough to abundantly leave everybody where ain't nobody got to fight. But that's how the devil do you. Dish you. And so he said, I tried to stop him, but I was held down by the Jackson 5 members. I started to yell, "Get off my sister, get off my sister." But they weren't bothered one bit. I was quickly subdued by the group, who then brought my sister into the main entertainment room, where a satanic pentagram was drawn on the floor in white chalk. They took off all my sister's clothes and placed her on the table at the altar they had created. Then the Jackson 5 members, one by one, began to rape my sister. Each of the Shy-Lights members, including my father, raped her next. To make matters worse, as they were holding me down, they raped me as well. All 12 of them were animals as they eyed me one by one. I forgot. I wasn't supposed to say it. I'm sorry. It was truly a terrifying experience. I was able to escape and go upstairs. How? Why? From the top of the stairwell, I could see the black hooded priest walking behind Joe and Marshall, and they were escorting my sister out of the room where they had just eyed her. The satanic priest had a Caucasian infant in his arms who looked to be only about 2 months old. Joe Jackson reached under the altar and came back up with a dagger and a gold goblet adorned with jewels and rubies. In one swift motion, Joe put the baby on the altar and held it down while Marshall slit the baby's neck. Then Joe Jackson placed the goblet underneath the child's neck and collected its blood. I watched in horror as the baby died soon after having its throat slit. Joe took the blood-filled cup, drank some of it, then passed it around to the other peoples in the room. He first passed it to the members of Jackson 5, who were each in black robes. Each member took a sip and passed it to the next person. Nobody once had the good idea of, oh, let's just try something weird. That's not the origin of that. The origin is from sexual ritual abuse and from the understanding by conjurers that doing the most egregious things that disrespect creation tears the very fabric, the very veil of reality of the third dimension, and allows in entities that are anathema to creation.
And of course, we can't forget the logos.
For instance, the Masonic square and compass. Unfinished triangle pointing up, unfinished triangle pointing down, and 2 X's can be made. Speaking of unfinished triangles, if you finish them, we get the 6-pointed star. Also, the seal of Saturn is the seal of Azazel, both easily converted into the star. Here's a Fox channel with 2 X's. ExxonMobil. The Kabbalah Tree of Life has within it the 6-pointed star and the double X. Nissan. Simple Saturn logo. Saturn cars. Here's an interesting one. We take Toyota, which semi looks like Saturn, but for those with eyes to see, we can also make out an owl. If you've done your research, it's simple to find that owls are one of the animals governed by Saturn. This is the kind of simple Saturn symbol that I don't really point out. If you look up Saturn corporate logos, you'll find a video where somebody shows every logo that they could possibly find that has swooshes and half rings like Whirlpool, Burger King, Pepsi. Sometimes it's just put out there like Sega Saturn. Looks a lot like the Orphic egg, also known as the cosmic egg, world egg, and mundane egg. It's in many ancient creation myths. Here's an ad for Sega Saturn. Head for Saturn. This one is my favorite. It's my personal belief that the elite do this to toy with people. They will zone in on names to use for specific causes. This is how I see this ad. Up on the top left-hand corner it says Ice Cube on Saturn. All I see is Cube on Saturn. In his hand is the console looking like a cube. I believe in coincidences, I've just never seen one. So now we have the GameCube.
You can immediately connect this with the star of Saturn. You can also immediately connect this to the G that's in the middle of the Masonic square and compass.
Now, wrapping this up, I want the viewer to realize that Lucifer himself knows a great deal about heaven and some of the mysteries therein. These are some of the secrets that he seems to want to auction off to mankind with a heavy price tag. Because you get all the way to the end of the book in Revelations chapter 21 verse 16, talking about New Jerusalem. It says the city was laid out like a square as long as it was wide. Some scholars believe that this may be where Lucifer grabbed the whole cube concept to begin with, perverted it and made it his own. Some even go as far as to say that once Lucifer gained control of the world, he boxed it in this primordial cube, this prison, if you will, that we are all born into, what we call the Matrix. And for most mankind, there seems to be no escape from this Matrix. However, be of good cheer. There is someone who holds you dear, and his return is near.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is not available. At the tone, please record your message.
This is a representative of the Most High calling to ask about your soul. Are you going to pick up?